Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Oh, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Man, you know, those days you wake up and you just got like that pain in your neck. That's every day. The pain in my neck is that our federal government keeps squashing us and doing dumb things and keeps trying to spin stories that it doesn't want to touch because there's no difference between who's in office. If you're going to believe that there's something called a uniparty, then you got to really act like there's a uniparty. I have some uniparty stories today we're going to talk about. Today's episode is going to be preoccupied by what I think is still the biggest story in America. And it only got bigger yesterday, at least for me, and it will get bigger for you quite soon. There's only so much I can say sometimes. You guys, I'm dancing between this really crazy place where not only are we talking about what's going on in the news, sharing some of the things that are happening on a national scale, but I'm actively out there participating in it. And I kind of hate it. Can I be really clear and honest, I guess, with you all, that I don't enjoy being part of the story. And a huge chunk of what we're going to cover today is me being part of the story. And it's not, this is more almost therapeutic because it's so crazy to me that here I sit. I'm a regular dad. I've got 4 little kids downstairs that are doing homeschooling. Last night, we had a little fire in our backyard. We roasted marshmallows. We watched the sun go down, like normal everyday suburban dad stuff. I went for a run. I'm 43 and I pulled a freaking muscle in my calf again, or it got too tight for me to run. So I'm limping home. Like just like the most regular things you can think of. And I've got a lawsuit that's pending right now that 5 seconds before we went live, I forwarded it off to my attorneys to make a statement to Newsweek because major national publications want to know what we think about stuff. And I have a public national figure suing me for an amount of money that I don't have. And it's going to already, at the very bare minimum, cost me like 2+ months salary or earnings from what I do for a living. Imagine someone just popped up, didn't like how you said something, and then pulled 20% of your earnings for the year. It's almost like what our government does to us with your taxes, except this isn't a tax. This is done by someone who is related to one of the top government officials in this country and is using donation money, as far as I can tell. This is the estimation I have. So a donation-based, like, legal firm, law fund is being used to sue me. And here's the craziest part about all this stuff. I didn't even know I was going to say this, but I got invited to the Christmas party for the law firm that is suing me for $5 million because I've been invited there for the last 4 years because we helped them raise like $1.3 million when we went public with our story and we referred people to the Fight with Kash foundations. Do you guys get how, like, every morning I wake up and I'm like, what is that feeling on my neck? And it's just that I went from being a regular guy sitting in a car watching bad guys and hoping that we could find them, including, it turns out, the neighbor of the freaking pipe bomb subject that Steve Baker has identified. We're getting there, trust me. To the point where now I wake up and I'm carrying a $5 million just threat lawsuit on frivolous nonsense over my shoulders. And it feels like I'm yoked up at all time, like I'm carrying, a couple of massive weights on either side. And I don't mean to complain about it, but it's such a crazy experience that I'm sharing it with you. As some of you have been with me since the beginning when we started talking in the first place, I always knew we were walking into something. I got a phone call last night, for whatever it's worth, from a former FBI agent, a retired FBI agent. And he goes, this is the kind of stuff that people get killed over. And I go, I know, we're laughing about that. I said the same thing to Steve Baker. I said, hey, every time I hang up the phone with him, I'm like, don't get killed. And he was like, yeah, got it, man. Okay, good. Or I'll be like, stay safe, stay underneath the 5th floor in your hotel. And he's like, yeah, for sure. I'm like, no balcony accidents, right? We're talking about the most serious thing that someone might come and kill us. And I've been talking about this since I went privately to Congress with my story. I went to Congress in October of 2021 while an FBI agent, and my wife goes, are the death squads going to come for us now? And I'm like, I don't know. They better not send anybody they don't want dead because I'm going to kill them. I will shoot anybody that tries to hurt my family or me, and I may go down in the process, but like, This is a noted, regular conversation feature on my phone when I talk to almost anybody that has any background, and it's getting more and more familiar. That's truly nuts. And I guess I didn't realize how much that actually weighs on me. That when my friends and I are casually discussing being killed for what we do, which we do discuss regularly, and then strangers reach out that are former FBI, former intel people, and they go, people get killed over this stuff. And you're like, yeah, you can't think about that every day when you wake up, but I've got to imagine that my body knows that every night when I go to bed. And I sleep with night vision above me just that I can pull it on and go. I'm not kidding here. Anybody who's seen the pictures knows. I've got a suppressed rifle right above my head. I could literally reach up and grab it and get to work. I don't ever want to do that. I have babies, little ones. I have a 2-year-old that doesn't understand anything, just runs down and every morning says, "You're my dad." And I'm like, thank God. Yeah. Little bit of reality. This is a heavy cycle. And what we're seeing right now, for whatever it's worth, we're walking into the spin cycle, which is where there are two things that are aggressively happening at the same time. Partially, the guys that are working in our government that do not want this big story to come out. And it's not just Bongino and Patel and the story of the FBI, although that's a big chunk of it. But the other piece of it is that this brings the entirety of the scam really home to you. Multiple government agencies don't want this out. The DOJ does not want this. Background information, we've been told, will not prosecute, is not going to bring a case, is doing everything they can to avoid it. Federal law enforcement doesn't want to touch it. Federal prosecution doesn't want to touch it. The media is scared of it. They're terrified of it. I'm going to show you that today. I got text messages yesterday morning while we were doing the podcast saying, "Hey, would you come on with Schmidt?" And I'm like, who is Schmidt and who are you? Why are you texting me? And it turns out it was the producer for Rob Schmidt. And they booked me on the show last night. For those of you that watch Newsmax, you'll realize I was not on the show that night because as I went out for my fitness and tried to get on a bike and move my heart rate a little bit and not have as much tension in my back and did my thing, guess what? Text messages on my way home, on the jog. Yeah, we're going to go with somebody else. So I'm going to play you what they went with. Not a bad guy, by the way. I spent an hour talking to Chief Sund yesterday. He's the one they interviewed. But they found a skeptic, somebody that could go and throw some shade on it. The call has gone out. Suppress this story at all costs. What they don't know and what they can't bargain on is those radical actors, the suspendables. I told you there aren't only the ones you've seen. I've always told you guys there are suspendables that you haven't seen, and I'm going to come. Today is one of those days when I am reaffirmed that that is the case. One of you guys asked, can you start a legal defense fund? Maybe we'll have to do that. My attorneys asked me if we could start doing something like that. They agreed to a flat rate, and the flat rate is still more than most of you guys could write a check for, more than I want to write a check for. I'm super frugal and I save everything. And it's basically like, oh, good, I'll just give that all to an attorney because some chick who sings the national anthem for a living is offended by some words that didn't mean what she said. Craziness. All right, that's enough bitching about that nonsense. Let's get into a freaking sponsor read. I'm going to take a deep breath here because today is going to be kind of heavy. We're going to talk about some really wild stuff. If you're also worried about a million things out there, and a lot of us have been since COVID, millions of Americans were concerned, like, what if something bad happens? They go to My Patriot Supply. You can go to mypatriotsupply.com/KYLE, put my name at the end of it, mypatriotsupply.com/Kyle. There's a link in the show description. Wherever it is you're listening, just scroll down or click open, expand, see more. Guys, emergency food, that's great. That's a good option. You definitely want that. But the one problem people often make is that they don't know how to cook it. Like they don't actually have power in a real emergency or the grid's down or something else. So what are you going to do about that? Our friends at My Patriot Supply put together a Black Friday survival special. That's what's going on right now. That's the deal that they are featuring. It's a 4-week emergency food kit plus $150 worth of free gifts to include what you might need to prepare your emergency meals, like a cook stove, which can also keep you warm, fuel and fire starters, water purification, bug out bag, etc. A bunch of little things that may make it so that you can get through a minor emergency, like a month. That's a minor emergency when we look at what's going on right now. It's a complete survival kit for your family to ride out natural disasters. That could be enough for like a whole family to eat for a week, which probably is the most realistic scenario. It's a great Christmas gift. You guys can check it out. It's now through Black Friday. They've started it early. mypatriotsupply.com/Kyle. If you're watching me on a TV, which I found out that some of you actually do, very cool. You can literally hold your phone up and scan that QR code that you see on the screen. If you're watching me on Spotify, you can take a screenshot of it. If you're just listening on the audio, then you have to scroll down and use the link in the show description. That's what we got for today on the first sponsor. And make sure that whatever it is, like if you guys are not ready for something goofy, It's starting to get chilly, and people are starting to realize, like, I'll tell you what, global warming doesn't kill people, but global cold does kill people, and this is the time we're moving into that season. So make yourself prepared for whatever's coming your way. And yeah, let's do that. Let's start right now. And today is Tuesday. It is November the 11th. I usually start with that, I feel like, which means that it is 11/11/2025. It is Armistice Day or Veterans Day. So happy Veterans Day to those of you who served. We're all grateful for your service. I'm grateful for people that I know that served. Thanks for doing it. I know you got paid too, so we don't actually have to thank you, but we will. And for those of you that put it on the line, and those of you who lost something, whether it be a little bit of your sanity, even for a little while, or for those of you who lost part of your body or who are injured or still walking around with a reminder of what it is from your service, injuries and so on, don't you be embarrassed about getting a VA benefit. I know people that have always told me, I really felt bad about collecting from the VA. You know what? Our government's going to take our money and give it to all kinds of insane things. They're going to give it to the Afghan refugees that probably snuck over here and you fought. They're going to give it to people who haven't done anything in this country and have never contributed. They showed up and put their hand out. So don't you be afraid of taking a VA benefit. When that's the last bit of fraud, waste, and abuse that exists in our governmental spending, then maybe we go ahead and worry about that. But until then, collect your benefits, keep your head up high, and thank you for serving this nation, even though you probably might think different things about it now than you did when you signed up. And I think that's definitely the case for me. If you'd ask me if I do it over again, I couldn't change who I am or what things made me. A lot of times I think about the fact that signing up for military service at 27 was a truly formative pivot in my life from being kind of a dumb kid who just kind of went with the flow. I made a decision when I was about 25 and a half, 26. And I thought, here I am in this world, and I'm not building anything and I'm not destroying anything. So what mark am I making on this planet? And where would I be if I were to look back 10,000 years ago and we were living in a small tribe? Like, what would my role be in that tribe? And I decided my role would be standing out in front of the people that I was interested in protecting and making sure that my life went first. I think a lot of you guys had that same instinct. So for those of you that served, consider that. Most of you are the same people. Even if you wouldn't make the same decision today, you still would have made the same decision back then because you wouldn't be who you are without that. So, all right. Our chat is already active. So if you guys are watching right now, I'd appreciate it if you guys give me a thumbs up over on Rumble. I don't like the whole smash the like button thing. You're just clicking it. Like, I don't even care if you're watching on your phone. Like, if you smash your phone, you're goofy. So just go ahead and tap that little thing that says like. We appreciate those. We work here for your, they're not even tips. We just work here for your appreciation, for your applause. Rumble, YouTube, X, all those places. If you guys want to actually subscribe where it matters to us, Rumble and YouTube are the big ones. And then lastly, you can always find us over on Spotify, which is KyleSerafinshow.com. If you ever want to send it to someone, send them the link, KyleSerafinshow.com, send, and they can pull it up on Spotify where they can watch audio or video and they can trans between. If you're just listening, that's what you're missing out on. Those are the best places to go. Should we just get into it right now? I saw this and I can't unsee it. There's a little mashup going on right now. Alexis Wilkins, I knew this a couple days ago, but Alexis Wilkins, who is the girlfriend of Kash Patel, has decided that she's now going to execute a new lawsuit against Elijah Schaffer. And he thinks it's because she's honed in on the fact that his company is worth $5 million, and that's the valuation. And that's not what's going on here. She's just sued everybody for $5 million. And she sued a guy named Sam Parker, who I spoke to and said he has $200 to his name. So Sam Parker, not a wealthy guy, not worth $5 million. She sued Kyle Serafin, also not worth $5 million. And she sued Elijah Schaffer, who now apparently is actually worth $5 million. That's pretty dark. It's pretty frustrating. It's pretty frustrating when your government is coming after you. And I say government because when you are dating somebody, you have access to somebody that actually has the means of power and the investigative capabilities of an $11 billion agency, and also had the fundraising behind him to pull in over $1 million, I think more than several $1 million over the last couple of years, on the backs of whistleblowers, which is why I was invited to their Christmas party. It's truly troubling. It's not a good feeling. It's nice to know that I'm not alone in this. I think they actually suddenly realize, like, hey, crap, we sued Serafin and he didn't create this. Although they claim that I did create it in the lawsuit, in the complaint. Says I fabricated it. To fabricate would mean to create something out of nothing, to build it, and I did not. This story has been going on since February, and it's come from people inside and outside the United States. And it turns out I believe in this America, the one that I signed up to serve, meant that even if you didn't agree with me, and even if you said nasty things about me, you have a right to say that. I have this weird instinct about the First Amendment, and maybe some of you have that too, though, especially you veterans. Didn't we always say that it was the service in the military was meant so that even if you didn't agree with someone, you defend their right to say it to the death? Isn't that kind of what you do when you swear allegiance to the United States Constitution, particularly that Bill of Rights and that First Amendment out there? That's what I believe in. You know what's troubling? Our FBI director doesn't believe it. You're seeing his face on the screen right there. I'm going to play you something. I want to hone in on two things in this clip. First, censorship. I think that's a leftist value. Call me crazy, but that's not a liberal, and it's not a conservative position. That is a leftist value. And it might be a hard right value too if you're sort of heading towards fascism, where we tell you what you can say. That's part one. So the censorship aspect of this clip is troubling. I have played this before, but it's been a few weeks. The second part of this clip that's really troubling to me. He says our children. The FBI director is unmarried. He has no children. He doesn't have children to reference, and he cannot collectively claim our children, but he uses that word, and he does it really casually. He's going to defend our children. Well, thank you very much, sir, but maybe not. Maybe sit this one out. Why don't we just call you Kamala Harris? I remember Kamala Harris told us that the children of the community are the children of the community, and their community's children. No, my children are my children, and I teach them. We just did a constitutional amendment vote in the state of Texas saying that parents are the number one decision maker. So if I want my kids on or off the internet, if I want them consuming or not consuming some information, or if I want to keep content away from them, or I want to expose them to it the way that I want, get the hell out of the way. Guy who's the FBI director, who's dating some chick who's 20 years younger, guy who has no babies at all and has no skin in this particular fight. Why are you out there talking about it, Kamala Patel? You listen to that. You tell me this doesn't rub you awfully wrong. Because it does feel exactly the same thing as suing journalists who are making their voices heard, whether you like them or not, no matter how gross it may be.
The simple answer, in my opinion, is social media is wildly out of control, and there's too much clickbait in this country. And one of the things I highlighted to Congress in my testimony last week was if we want to protect our youth, we got to get more involved in social media and online platforms, because that's where the folks, the assassins of this world, get radicalized. That's where they're the lone wolf actors in general. And so we have to get after that problem set. And I asked for Congress to help in doing so. But speaking of Charlie Kirk, who was a very dear friend of mine, and then I was tasked with leading the nationwide manhunt to find the perpetrators involved. Of course, we were going to use every resource we have to find every single person involved. And the investigation's still ongoing. But we, as one of the pillars of my leadership here at the FBI, is transparency. We've produced more documents to Congress than my last two predecessors combined by twofold. Just to put it in perspective. So when we take our investigations out to the streets, I have the same ethos. And this is how we got Charlie Kirk's alleged assassin, so fast. The Boston Marathon bomber, which happened in downtown Boston during the Boston Marathon, took 5 days, and there was a police officer was killed in that manhunt. Luigi Mangione, who allegedly murdered an individual, the CEO of the healthcare company, in downtown Manhattan in broad daylight.
I just want to hear more about the transparency. If you could just, could somebody please put a comment below about the transparency that we're getting? November 708, Juliet Hotel, United States Government, Washington, D.C. This aircraft is not available for public tracking per the request of the owner-operator. That's my airplane. Oh, can we track it? No, it's not. It is our airplane because we own it as American taxpayers. Tell me more about that transparency, Director Kash Patel. Could you tell me more about our children that you don't have, Guy? I don't mean to be flippant and I don't mean to be rude per se, but when someone starts talking about my kids, that's about when you start hitting my emotions. That's about when you start hitting my violent streak. We had a little post the other day that I pushed up on X because I think it's funny. And somebody, some lady said, I followed you for your tracking skills. She's like some leftist with a bunch of emojis in her banner that are like a trans flag and a gay flag and a rainbow and a Ukraine flag and some other nonsense. She's like, I followed you for your tracking skills. I'm like, my tracking skills? My tracking skills are going to a website where publicly available information is available to the public. That's my tracking skills. She's like, I feel sorry for your wife. I'm like, really? My wife married me for my nunchuck skills and my hacking skills and my bow staff skills and my willingness to gut somebody who wants to come after our children's skills. Like the absolute rage that I have as a father and my 2 decades of training in violence so that I could deploy that if somebody wants to come after our offspring. Those are the skills that like I got married for whatever it's worth, folks. And probably my sense of humor, which is pretty dark. This is my tracking skills showing you. Our transparent FBI director said, no, you may not follow what I'm doing. You cannot look at it. We're going to go back to the back to the podcast and the suing thing in a second. Let's just do this one real quick because this came from The Independent, who I suspect, although I cannot prove, I suspect The Independent has been pulling an awful lot of their stories from the Kyle Seraphin show. Call me crazy, but what does this thing say? Kash Patel won a secret chip to China last week amid criticism about private jet usage. Well, who's been criticizing his use of the private jet, if not me? You can actually go into some of these AI things and find out who the first person to comment on it and make it trend on social media. It was this guy right here, sitting here. I'm not trying to claim it. I'm just telling you, I've been on the story for over 3 years because it is a big story. And it turns out that there's a big spin that is going on. I'm going to open something up to your eyes. For those of you, I'm going to put the chat on the screen for a second. Let me open this up to you. We have 2 social media influencers that are running our FBI. Why do you care about the FBI? Because they're the part of the government that can come in and kill you. They can take your freedom, they can arrest you, they can spy on you, and then they can take you away from your children or your grandchildren. So that's part 1. That's why I care so much. And it just turns out that I'm just the guy that happens to know some things about it. More than most. Okay? When I was speaking to a whistleblower and a whistleblower attorney yesterday, one of the crazy things he said, which made me laugh, was that what are the odds that the biggest thorn in the side of the FBI also happened to be sitting on the actual surveillance that was outside the person's house that has recently been named as a potential subject for the pipe bomb dropping on January 6th. And we both smirked, and he said, 100%. The odds are 100% because God puts people where they need to be. All you got to do is go back and read the Old Testament. That made me think about it. Not wrong. It turns out we've had this information for a long time. We now have 2 social media influencers that are out trying to run our most dangerous and scary government agency. Hands down, they're scarier than the CIA because they operate more domestically. They're scarier than anyone else. They're scarier than the IRS because like they'll be the ones that come and grab you. The IRS, I've worked with them. They're actually not that scary when it comes to like coming in. They'll knock on your door and then they'll leave if you slam it. We have 2 social media influencers running our FBI. Our FBI. That's their words, not mine. So what do they do when things go wrong? They go to influence. They go to influencing movement. They go to influencing friendlies. They go and lean on social media people who might be able to spin their story. We are in the spin cycle right now. Dan Bongino went to his mouthpiece. That's Julie Kelly. I got her stuff. She went on Bannon yesterday. It's embarrassing. I don't know. Listen, I have some experience with people who are on benzodiazepine type products, like benzos slow you down. I don't know that that's what's going on there, but I'm looking at it and I'm listening and going, you sound like you're really, really trying to get through something. Like you're either having an emotional breakdown or maybe medicated. So, okay. That's who Dan Bongino goes to when there's a problem. He goes to his loudest mouthpiece, and it turns out now it's Julie Kelly. Who does Kash Patel go to? He goes directly to a man named John Solomon. They work together on the Archives Project. I've showed you guys before. There is a letter from Donald Trump authorizing 2 people, Kash Patel and John Solomon, to access his records with his authorization to the National Archives. And this is a public source open document that was written by the White House. Okay, fine. That goes back to like 2022, after Donald Trump was out of office. Let's quickly cover this story about the movement. Patel flew to Beijing on Friday, met with officials on Saturday. Reuters reports, do they now, reporting that neither the Chinese foreign minister or the U.S. embassy in the Chinese capital acknowledged the fly-in visit. Do you know who acknowledged it and who knew? You guys knew, because I've been covering this thing. Because I've been tracking this plane. He's, by the way, still hanging out in Las Vegas. I guess he's working from home this week, trying to catch up after a long, important trip to the Asia Orient. The development comes after the use of his personal jets came under spotlight when he was accused of using a Bureau plane to travel to watch his country music sensation girlfriend, I added that part, Alexis Wilkins, perform at a wrestling event at Pennsylvania State University, also known as Penn State. He angrily was upset about, or he reacted angrily to the incident, and then he actually interpreted it as a attack on his partner, who he called a true patriot and a rock-solid conservative. I actually have some footage of said rock-solid conservative. We're going to get to more about the plane stuff in a second. I found this footage. This was tweeted out by Shadow of Ezra. I don't know why they're interviewing her. I don't know why this woman is wearing a like a Wonder Woman costume top. I guess, I mean, she's going to go do the thing she does for a living. She's going to go sing the national anthem. I don't know what singing the national anthem pays, but she's singing the national anthem at another event, which seems to be all that she does. And I'm going to let her explain who she is. This woman is a public figure. And when you're a public figure who gets interviewed by random people and you get invited on TV shows to talk about whether there's sleeper cells in America because you're a counterterrorism expert commentator, and you run a podcast, which, by the way, is over here. I think I have that. We have the podcast? Yeah, there it is. She's got more followers than I got over on Rumble. She hasn't made one of these things in quite a while. We're going back 3 months now since the last one, Between the Headlines. And I know most of you are wondering, like, is there a way, Kyle, is there a way that I can find out what a 26-year-old who's never had a real job thinks about politics? And the answer is yes, you can. You can go to Alexis Wilkins' Rumble page right now. You can find out what somebody who's never held a W-2 employment the way that you guys go do, where you out there and you use your mind and your skills and you go out there and create something, or you destroy something, or you're out there providing a service. Like, she's a singer and she's an advisor to the NRA and she's an ambassador to Turning Point and she sings the national anthem, as far as I can tell. I don't know. And here's what she had to say about herself. So let's just listen in her own words. What are you doing here, Alexis? How'd you get here on the ground here in front of the stage?
So Alexis, what are you doing here? Why are you at this event? Why was it important to you?
So I am here because I am singing the national anthem and we're doing a show after the amazing speakers, but I love Independent Women's Forum and Our Bodies, Our Sports whole program and organization because it is so much further than even sports. I mean, sports are a huge issue, keeping biological men out of women's sports. It not only is dangerous for women, it's dangerous in locker rooms, it's dangerous on the field or in the pool or wherever you're competing with men, but it's also just, it's anti-common sense, and that's something that I think everyone's working really hard to combat right now. So I'm so excited to be here, and it goes beyond, like I said, it's something that, anything that's not commonsensical, we need to be fighting right now. And so we need to protect our girls.
That's perfect. Can you tell us a little bit about your music?
Yeah, so I sing country music, and I have for a long time. I sing songs that are, regular country music that, kind of like I grew up on. We do real instruments, try to keep it really classic, but I also sing patriotic songs and write patriotic songs for people who want to listen to that and people who love America. There are a lot of artists that sing songs that maybe don't agree with your values or that you can't play in front of your kids, and I try to avoid that and definitely do avoid that. And so hopefully, everyone can listen to the music. And then I also have a show called Between the Headlines on Rumble where we recap the news every Friday and then do various political commentary.
She does political commentary on the side while she's singing country music, and her Spotify channel gets like almost 8,400 total listens per month. Just for anybody that's listening to this program, if you're really curious about numbers, because that's kind of how I operate, we get about 60 to 65,000 listens on Spotify per month, and it constitutes 28.5% of our total audience downloads on just the audio, not the video. So we're about 27 times more listened to than this gal is, who's a country music sensation. So I'm actually going to redesignate myself as a political podcasting sensation. And I hope you guys will come along with that as we go out there and deal with people on social media. If anybody actually refers to me otherwise as a MAGA podcaster or a conspiracy theorist or a former FBI guy, I would really prefer that we get corrected to political podcasting sensation, because that's really what's up. And I dabble also, by the way, in singing to children in the bathtub. And occasionally I also sing goodnight lullabies to my kids. So if you guys want to add that, we could do that too. We could talk about those things. The sad thing is that the music that we have about Kash Patel's jet that one of one of the social media followers I have sent me is actually catchier than anything that I can think of that this woman has sung. In fact, I actually know the words to the silly AI song that he made and not the words to anything that she's sung. And I listen to female country music artists, and I have for a long time. I grew up listening to country. I actually grew up listening to country. I actually grew up in Texas, America for like a big chunk of my life. I've moved to the state 7 times. Anyhow, Let's do a read from my friends at Silent. It's a good reminder. There's no reason to trust what our government's up to. They're willing to block their travel, but not yours. If you want to block your access from them following you, this is how you do it. Good Faraday product, something like this. This is the most inexpensive one they have. It's a really effective Faraday sleeve with magnets in it, so you just slide it in and close it. It's even got an external pocket, so if you want to keep the radiation away from your body, the sort of the RF signals coming off these devices, you can block it on your body side and you can still have it actually receive phone calls and stuff, which is kind of a cool little thing. You're seeing the E3 Everyday Faraday backpack on the screen. That is an outstanding backpack. It carries way more than it really should. They designed it very well. It's got all kinds of little like gadgets and pockets and stuff, and they're very well thought out, which is not always the case when you go and buy somebody else's design on a backpack. Zippers are great. Chest strap is great. It's very low visibility, which I love. It's just a great design. Anyway, Silent is slnt.com/KYLE. Go to that website. Use my name at checkout, KYLE. Save yourself 15%. What are we trying to do? We're trying to block government agencies and big tech and corporate data brokers and cyber criminals and scumbags and whoever else is out there fighting for a piece of your digital footprint. You guys are finding out with the Blaze story and gate analysis, they can find everything about you. If you want to kind of limit some of that exposure, it may be too late in some cases, but certainly where you are currently, you can do that. And they do it by blocking all the wireless signals coming out of your phone and your tablet and your laptops and so on. Cellular, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, RFID, GPS, NFC, you name it. The tracking goes away. The remote access is not possible, and there are no breadcrumbs for anyone to follow you. Special operations use this stuff. Counterintelligence agents use this stuff. Intelligence officers use them overseas. It is a very capable thing. They've got contracts with the military. Silent makes great stuff. If you guys want to spend more and you want to buy one that's made in the US, you can certainly do that and you can afford it. Knock yourself out. Berry compliance is an option. You can also buy the ones that are sewn in the overseas stuff and they work as well. Maybe better. I don't know. They certainly are a better price point. And so buy the thing that makes the sense. These are good company, good people. They've been supporting us for quite a while. They just signed up to do some more work with us. So I really appreciate them and I love their products. I actually buy them and I use them and I use them all the time. So guys, check them out. I bring them with me wherever I go. slnt.com/KYLE. It is a link in the show description that you can easily find. And I encourage you to do so. If you're in the market for, I don't know, not having your government come after you, which would be good. Can we just do the cover up story? There you heard the girl. Here's the guy. So as I told you, social media influencers, what do? They go to what they know. Under times of crisis, we all do that, right? You just do the thing that you're familiar with. There's a reason why we cook comfort food, because it's something that we know and it's familiar and it brings us a sense of security. So what did Patel do when this story about the jet broke out? He went to his good buddy, John Solomon. And I'm going to read you the story here. The story says, FBI Chief Wray rolls dice with Congress contempt over, and then he jets to Vegas. Well, what does that mean? Oh, no, that's not Kash Patel. That was Chris Wray getting beat up over his jet usage. And John Solomon was the guy who did the beatings. Why? Because as I've been pointing out for literally 3 years now, we've got a real problem with the usage of FBI jets and private jets used by government officials. It's been an issue. It's been an ongoing issue. There have been FBI directors removed going back to the 90s. You guys recall this? This is what Bill Sessions was removed over. Clinton got rid of him. So this is not a new thing. When did they actually change the policy? Some of you may know this. It was between 2011 was the initial study. As far as I can tell, it was definitely codified in 2013. That's when we ended up having the movement towards mandated travel, not by Congress, but by executive policy. We've got a requirement now for everybody to use government jets when they are the Attorney General and when they are the FBI Director. So who was the FBI Director in 2013? Oh, it was Jim Comey. It was Jim Comey. And who have we been bitching about the jet usage of late? It's been Chris Wray. And now Kash Patel. Here's the funniest part. I'm actually going to put this on the screen because I didn't grab it earlier, and now I will. You guys will love this. John Solomon's cover is that Kash Patel is actually saving you guys money. Okay? He's saving you money in the way that he's using the private jet. Let's just do this live right there. Boom. I'm going to put this headline up. How is he saving you money, you wonder? Well, he's not the biggest abuser. It's a cash back is what it's called. FBI boss Patel uses the jet on par with his predecessors, but he's saving taxpayer dollars. So you should be saying thank you for his use of the jet. FBI directors, like the Attorney General, have been required to use it in the aftermath of the September 11th attack. He knows that's not true. It was actually 12 years later. Government jets instead of commercial for security reasons. That's also false. It's because who wanted to use them? Jim Comey. The most damning piece of this silly article, which you should know, is as follows. Patel has been subject to a whisper campaign in Washington, D.C. circles, echoed by legacy news sites since he took office in February. Did he now? Or is he dealing with the modern new media, aka social media, and this guy right here talking about it? There's no whispers. I'm yelling it. Go back and check the tape. Since he took office in February, the flight log shows that he's actually flown slightly less than the former FBI director, Jim Comey. He didn't fly less than Wray. He flew less than Comey, folks. And here's the stupidest thing that I've read. Overall, the flight logs show that Jim Comey was the most prodigious air traveler, averaging roughly 2.58 flights per week, compared with Kash Patel, who averaged 2.48 flights per week. Of course, Chris Wray, who was told that we should shut it down because of his usage, he actually flew 1.98 flights per week. So that is a difference. Let's see here. So the difference between being a prodigious air traveler and being totally acceptable and saving you money is 0.1 flights per week, a tenth of a flight. There's 52 weeks in a year. So in a year, Kash Patel has saved us about 1/2 of one flight. Am I doing that right? No. That's not right. He saved us 5 flights over a year. Is that right? 0.1 times 52. Yeah, 5.2 flights. He's going to save us 5.2 flights a year over Jim Comey, but he's going to be taking something like 0.5, 25, 30 flights more a year than Chris Wray, who he wanted to ground. I'm just saying, you go to John Solomon for your cover and you're going to get mediocre cover. This is pretty silly and pathetic. This is the best they got. The other person that went to cover, I told you, Dan Bongino went to his favorite outlet for coverage. He went to Miss Julie Kelly to cover up about the pipe bombs. Now, I haven't even told you guys this yet, and I didn't mean to bury the lead here, but let's just do it real quickly. We got a whistleblower disclosure yesterday about this story, this pipe bomb story that they would love to not cover. They would love to ignore it. You should read it. If you haven't read it, this is where you go. The truth about January 6th, it's blazemedia.com/truth. The story is still there. Former Capitol Police officer is a forensic match for J6 pipe bomber. Sources say that's the headline. Steve Baker, Joe Hanneman doing the work that an $11 billion a year agency could not do. And also the story of the FBI not prosecuting and the Capitol Police officers apparently having no problem using lethal force. That is a less than lethal tool in a lethal manner, or a potentially lethal manner, on January 6th. And it turns out that their stories are related because the person that they've identified as one of the trainers for less than lethal shooting on January 6th also happened to be the person who was a forensic match for the gate analysis and some other things that are going to be coming out in the near future. Let's do Julie Kelly. Let's go ahead and let's do a bureau cover up if we can. This is who they chose to represent them. I may stop in the midst of it, only because it's really hard to listen to. At least she got better lighting. She still has horrific taste. Julie Kelly is a multimillionaire. Her husband makes all the money. He's a lobbyist. You guys may know this. He's a Democrat lobbyist out of Chicago and lobbies for like big food, which is why she used to do quote unquote food blogging, which was really just sort of propaganda pieces from Monsanto and others. So that's what goes on there. There's this old expression. I remember seeing it in like an art class, maybe when I was in high school. And it was a performative art, or it was sort of like modern art where somebody spent money and bought billboards, or they brought marquees that were out in Las Vegas, Nevada. And one of the ones I'll never forget was money creates taste. I want you to consider that as you see this clip as a sort of meta-analysis. Money creates tape. You ever meet like rich people who have a bunch of money and they spend it on the most god-awful, hideous things? Let's just put it this way. Julie Kelly is never going to out her husband for his campaign donations, even if he did them in her name, because Chanel doesn't buy itself. She spends horrifically stupid amounts of money on god-awful, ugly-looking things, including this hideous piece of art that's behind her, which is not a good... Like, she should go back to being whatever her natural hair color is, too, because this just looks awful. She looks not well. And I'm saying that because what she says sounds worse. So the best thing we can do is talk about the visual. She's actually improved the visual appearance of her appearances on Bannon. For a lady who shows up on podcasts and on broadcasts as frequently as she does, it's really wild to me that nobody has told her, hey, lady, you look terrible. You sound worse. You should just stay with print. She can't do it. Narcissism is a problem. Here we go. Oh, we got to play it too, don't I? Here we go. Play clip.
This is a report on Blaze Media, and this was authored by Steve Baker and Joe Hanneman, two reporters who have covered January 6th. And this was teased last week, to your point, by Glenn Beck and Steve Baker, that this was going to be the greatest political scandal of all time, that this would implicate high-level Trump administration officials, including perhaps CIA Director John Ratcliffe, DNI Director Tulsi Gabbard, and others.
I'm going to stop you right there for a second. You guys can take a breather. If you need to pull out your barf bags, knock yourself out, that's okay. Here's the best part. She's telling the story of what was written. She's adding facts that are not part of it. Nobody said it would implicate Tulsi Gabbard. Nobody said it would implicate John Ratcliffe. What was said was that this woman in the actual story, which she probably didn't even read based on what I'm saying, because she completely ignores the fact that what I shared is another nail in a really, really strong story. Nobody said that they were involved. What they said is that they may be actually part of they might be in danger because this woman operates in a physical security role, an armed role around the ODNI, the Director of National Intelligence, and the Director of the CIA. She's part of the campus physical security team or force protection over at CIA. The woman that they have named. And let me add to that real quickly as well. If you guys don't know how protective details work in the federal government, it's unlikely that many of you do. But when you have someone that's, let's say, the FBI director's detail, or you have, let's say, the president's detail, at some point in time, they run out of overtime. You guys may be aware of this. They run out of overtime because they burn up so many hours doing overtime. The FBI is very famous for this. So what do? They lean on people that have similar backgrounds as the actual trained protective detail to step into that role, and they do TDYs. And then they lean on the TDY guys because those guys have not maxed out their overtime. Essentially, the people that are on the detail that are going to be punching in a bunch of overtime, they don't want to work for free, which is reasonable. They want to get paid for the overtime that they do. And when they can no longer be paid for that because there's a federal salary cap, they end up leaning into the pool of people that would be useful. The FBI will grab agents from all the different SWAT teams, TDY in, fly them, pay them per diem, pay them for a hotel, pay them for an extra car, whatever, and put them on these details so that the guys who are going to not be able to get overtime don't have to work for free. You know what they do over at CIA? Same thing they do at the FBI. When you run out of overtime for your security detail, which always happens, and it happens towards the end of the year, you start leaning on people that have similar backgrounds. Do you know who has a similar background and is in the same little division? The force protection people, whether they're working on campus or whether they are directly working for the detail, it's all the same umbrella over at CIA when it comes to the way the org chart works. So the people you would lean on would be your security officers that are already trained and already carry a weapon on behalf of your agency. The odds that this woman was not tapped at some point in time to be part of the security detail, it's just not her full-time job. So CIA issued a correction this week and said, well, she's not part of the security detail. The question is, has she ever been? Because I bet you she's been armed around the CIA director. And that means I bet you she's been armed around the DNI. I bet you she's been armed around a lot of people that the CIA director would be around on any given day. And at the end of the day, she's also freaking armed around all the people that work on Langley's campus, who are our security professionals. You got me? Julie Kelly made a materially false, let's say, insinuation with what she said, and she mischaracterized Glenn Beck. Totally inaccurate, because I don't know that she read the piece. I think the rage that she had blinded her. Here we go.
Related to who these reporters believe they have identified as the individual seen on that very grainy, low quality surveillance video.
She's really mad about the surveillance video because the guys went and did the work and got better video. By the way, if you're hearing a feedback loop or a little bit of her audio, she has unprofessional audio because she's working with Real America's Voice, who's not a great professional broadcast service. And she apparently doesn't have in-ear monitors. This is really easily solved, but you're going to keep hearing her voice echo back at herself. That's on her end. That's not on our end.
Of a hoodie suspect walking around Capitol Hill on January 5th that evening, which is the time frame that the FBI and law enforcement believe those 2 dummy explosive pipe bombs were planted outside the headquarters of the RNC and the DNC, only to be conveniently and coincidentally discovered 17 hours later to coincide with the start of the joint session of Congress.
Honestly, is she medicated? What causes people to speak in single phrases if they are a professional who knows all the things about the story that they are called to talk about?
So this article took over social media and the internet all weekend. And it was supposed to not just identify this pipe bomber, but also expose this big scandal. Well, the article, in my opinion, fell far short of providing enough solid evidence to almost definitively, they said 98%, based on this gate analysis, which we can kind of talk about.
I would really love it if she did. Can we also talk about that the name of her subject, or her Substack, where she makes a bunch of money, is Declassified Live with Julie Kelly? A woman who's never held a security clearance, who's never worked under a security clearance, who's never been read in with a security clearance, who knows nothing about classification or declassification, doesn't understand exactly how basic paperwork functions in law enforcement, who had a big tiff with me because apparently I didn't believe the FBI was setting up Donald Trump for an assassination because they put the same piece of, little blurb that they do on every single search warrant and every single operation order that they've done since Ruby Ridge. Let's keep declassifying this live as we go.
Meaning the walking mannerisms and style
it's punishing me too, guys.
Of a Capitol Police officer.
You mean gait? You mean gait like a horse would have a gait, or like a human would have a gait?
Do you mean like a gate, like if you had hinges on a piece of wood and it would swing and close people from inside or outside of a fence gate? Or do you mean like gate, like a horse would have a gate and then somebody else might be walking with the... You don't know what gate analysis is? Don't be ridiculous. Bannon's not dumb. Why are we doing this?
The way you would walk, correct? The way you would propel yourself forward. Okay, keep going.
Propel yourself forward.
So G-A-I-T, not G-A-T-E, gate.
Right.
So apparently what happened is
Great
Steve
commentary.
Baker was looking at video from January 6th, Capitol Police officers who were using what they call non-lethal munitions on the crowd.
Nobody calls them non-lethal munitions, but if you're not a cop, if you're not a law enforcement professional, you don't know. The article refers to them as less than lethal, which is the official term. This freeze frame is truly haunting. I think we should leave it for a second. If you guys are not watching us over on Spotify, you're missing out. Check us out on Spotify. It's KyleSerafinshow.com. If you're just listening to this, you're missing a really, really bad freeze frame that is as bad as any I've ever done. You may hear a Spotify ad here too.
I've talked about that. And he apparently saw a Capitol Police officer who he thought had the same gait pattern as this individual on January 5th.
He didn't think it. They ran it through computers, sophisticated, incredibly expensive computers that are cutting edge technology that our intelligence service uses to identify terrorists, that uses the official biometric. You can go back to 2017 and 2018 and you can look up DISA. That's the Defense Information Systems Agency that handles all biometric information for the United States Pentagon and for the DoD. And they use gait analysis as a biometric. And it turns out it's one of the primary biometrics they use because it is unique and specific. But according to Julie Kelly, who's declassifying this for you live, she believes that Steve Baker watched some video and then decided that somebody was something based on him watching it. Do you understand how disingenuous this is what spin looks like? This is a discredit operation going on right now.
Still has not been identified, January 5th, 2021.
Is there something unique enough about the suspect? Because
yes,
this is like the Magruder film, kind of.
No.
You and Beatty and Posobiec and Glenn Beck's team and many others for hours and hours and hours have gone over all this grainy footage. I mean, Beatty was on the show one time. You talk about Glenn and his team. I mean, Beatty was on the show one time for an hour, and I think we went over this thing, and he had like every movement of this. And I didn't have a suspect at the time, but why this was so important, why the official narrative was a lie, and how this was going to be something that would explode the whole Fedsurrection, ma'am.
Ma'am. All right. So they're going to go here, and there's more of this, and I'll post it over on my page if you guys want. You can go to kyleserafin.com and watch it if you are so inclined. You can go watch Bannon's show from yesterday, which is essentially, look at that smug face. You can't make it up on Kelly. She's doing everything she can. This is what jealousy looks like. She's absolutely cooked. She's also been quoting a guy named John Nance, who was my former supervisor, but not the supervisor of my squad on January 6th, who said that what I'm saying never happened. I'm going to make you a little promise right now. We proved that it did. The paperwork backs it up. Oh, you mean there's FBI paperwork that backs up what Serafin said about when he was on surveillance? There's an old saying in the Bureau, if it wasn't written down, it didn't happen. We wrote down everything. We write down everything. Everything is documented. That's how it works. Of course it was documented. What are you guys, nuts? All right. You know who else used to know this stuff, by the way? This is a video from May of this year. This is after Dan Bongino went over to the FBI and his replacement, who I'm a big fan of, by the way. I think Vince Colonnese is a really nice man, and I'm going to continue to think that, regardless of what he says about me or what he thinks about me, which I don't know anymore. But Vince Colonnese is a great guy. He's stuck in this horrible scenario where he has to now cover for a boss who has decided to join the dark side. And I'm going to prove it to you. Today is November the 11th. That means that Bongino has been in for 8 months. I think we're past the 6 to 8 months of the cutesy time window. Are we not? Here's Vince Colonnese talking about his boss, Dan Bongino, who's talking about, we got to fix this pipe bomber scenario. This was from May, I think 28th or 29th of this year.
U.S. Attorney, the head of the Weaponization Task Force now, has been working with Dan. He told us that. He told you, he told this audience about that. I've been working with Dan on getting to the bottom of the pipe bomb case. And Dan gave an update this morning on that subject, and he said, actually, we've had some late-breaking developments. Cut 14, Dan Bongino on what they're learning now.
You know, we had 2 pipe bombs planted on January 6th. I mean, we were told by partisan actors out there this was the insurrection, the world was going to fall apart, and no one seemed to show any interest in this case. The second we got in, I put a team on it, and I said, I want answers on this. And I'm pretty confident that we're closing in on some suspects. The reason, by the way, I use social media with these cases, I'm trying to communicate on social media, is nothing's by accident, guys. I do nothing by accident.
That is the most cocky BS that I've ever heard. I do nothing by accident. Seriously, bro? Like, you are an accident. You've been an accident in that role. Do you know how I know? Because you haven't produced those results. Let's see, May, June, July, August, September, all of October. We're halfway into November. Oh my. We're 5.5 months since you did that. A lot of good stuff coming in. Nothing is by accident. You know what that means to me? That means you are intentionally not talking about this and trying to hide it. The spin cycle is, you don't do anything by accident, using your own words, and you have not even come close to addressing what Steve Baker said. And there's more behind that scenes. It's not my story yet to share, but let me just go. Remember, he said there was a problem of the FBI, that there was a reputational problem. He also said that there's somebody out there that's still causing a problem. Listen to the clip. Am I that problem? The more I think about it, I think I am.
So the moment Kash and I swore in, we realized that the first thing we had to do is rebuild public trust. This is your FBI. It's not mine. I tell the employees every day, you don't own it, you don't own it, I don't own it. It's like being the center fielder for the Yankees. That'll live with you forever, but you don't own the Yankees. It's a proud franchise. The place has taken a reputational hit. There is zero question about it. There were a lot of bad actors. One of them still out there causing us all kinds of trouble. So we had to fix it and rebuild public trust. One of the ways to do it is these cases of significant public interest that matter. You know, we had 2 pipe bombs planted on January 6th. I mean, we were told by partisan actors out there this was the insurrection, the world was going to fall apart, and no one seemed to show any interest in this case. The second we got in, I put a team on it, and I said, I want answers on this. And I'm pretty confident that we're closing in on some suspects.
Really? Again, that was the end of May. Where are they, buddy? Listen, you used to know some stuff. Maybe because you used to listen to me. Do you guys know? This is from January of 2024, back when Bongino knew some stuff, before he got into that office, and nothing he did was on accident. He's going to quote a reporter who's quoting me. Do you know how weird this is? Again, I'm just a regular dude sitting here. This is not false humility, by the way. I think very highly of myself, in so much as the places where I should. I think I'm a pretty okay dad. I could definitely be better. I think I'm an okay athlete for a guy who's 43 and doesn't play sports anymore. But like, I'm not going to go out there and try to step out and play pro ball. Like, I think we do a pretty good podcast here. I think we have a lot of fun with it, but I know I can be better. And so I watch sometimes to try to make it better. It's not false humility. But I do know what I'm talking about when I talk about the FBI. And I got reassured yesterday in the whistleblower disclosure that went out to members of Congress. Not only did the things I say turn out to be 100% correct from my memory, which I hadn't seen in almost 5 years, but even things that I was doubting turned out to be correct. And some additional connections were made. And they're not public yet, but they will be soon. And I'm not saying tune in next week. I'm just telling you, these people are full of crap. And Dan theoretically would have access to all this stuff, and he's chosen to not use it. Do you know how I know he has access? Because he's freaking quoting what I said, which means he should know where to look. The case file from January 5th or January 6th moved into the end of January of 2021 is critical information. There are not that many things in the serial files that you could take 9 months to get to them. Let me tell you something else that's really crazy that makes me think that this cover-up story that he used to believe is so legit. This is actually really, really crazy stuff, folks, because I didn't realize this till yesterday. The former deputy director, the guy who sat in the chair that Dan Bongino currently sits in, was a guy named Paul Abate. Now, Paul Abate was atrocious. He was atrocious for America. He was atrocious for people that believe in conservative principles. He was atrocious for people that believe in constitutionality and nonpartisan law enforcement. I'm going to officially say I did not like Paul Abate. I didn't like him when I worked there, and I don't think he was a good person. And all the stories I've heard since are incredibly bad, including things like sexual malfeasance. And there were allegations and rumors that he was involved in relationships with subordinates, that he tried to abuse some of the FBI's power in what's called the AFID, the alternate federal ID system. We had a whistleblower come and say that somebody was asked to buy a house or help him buy a house in a fake ID that the FBI created. I can't substantiate any of those stories right now. So those are the allegations that I've heard. But all the smoke on Paul Abate is bad. And he also, pretty publicly, to people like George Hill who heard it, there were phone calls where he said across the whole nation as he took over and became deputy director, which happened in February of 2021, by the way. That's why January is important. In February, he apparently went out and said something to the effect of, if you're not on board with the J6 prosecutions, you better find yourself the hell out of here and get another job. Now, let's get real honed in. January 5th, pipe bombs are placed. January 6th, the so-called insurrection, the Capitol riot takes place. The investigation starts immediately. If you were going to say, Kyle Seraphin, how long would it take somebody to find an unknown subject with an previously unknown mechanism of attack in the United States Capitol, where we have a pretty significant amount of resources and a massive public push? How long would it take you to find that person? I'm going to tell you it would take the FBI about a week. You heard Patel trying to, puff his credibility up. Oh, we found Charlie Kirk's assassin in 3 days. Yeah, he turned himself in. Good job. Oh, we found the person from the Boston Marathon bombing. 5 days. That's about right. They knew who it was. They got pretty close. But that was a very analogous scenario. Dropped bombs. The difference was the bombs were actually exploded, and there was a lot of injuries, and there was a really messy crime scene. So that actually should have taken longer. But about 5 to 7 days is a pretty reasonable time for the FBI to be on a subject of interest. And by the way, we were out surveilling somebody on January 13th, January 14th, which is about a week. And that fits right into the time frame. And it would take another couple of days to be feeling good enough to go out there and do a subject interview if you thought that person was it. And by the way, as I showed you guys the other day, boom, they did an interview of a person of interest on January the 19th. But I think I know a little bit more after yesterday's disclosures. POI2, I'm not confident POI2 was in fact the bomber. And I don't think it refers to the subject that Steve Baker talked about. I think POI2, and by the way, this is a public report, guys. You can find this. Tom Massey put it out. It's in yesterday's show notes. This is a 4-year update on the pipe bomb subject. POI1, POI2, and POI3. I believe that my team was following POI3, although it was not named as such. Having sort of like refreshed memory, I believe POI3 was the person that we followed simply because the smart card, traffic card from Metro, the Metro travel system rather, was registered to a separate individual, POI3. That fits with the information. So POI3 was most likely the door that we were sitting outside of. POI2, initially I thought, oh, well, that had to be the pipe bomber. I think actually POI1, which makes sense that the FBI would prioritize them. Person of interest 1, most likely. Person of interest 2, also suspicious, but also interesting. Person of interest 3, the furthest person out, somehow connected, maybe only just by sort of happenstance and location. I think that our subject that Steve Baker identified is actually POI1, which is not necessarily brought up in this document, but was known at the time, a week after January 6th. And guess what? Bongino knows what I used to say too. Here he is.
We don't know the January 5th backpack guy. Weird, because we have his license plate and his Metro card. We don't know the identity of the January 6th bomb discovery guy, despite the fact he's a hero and a Capitol Hill police officer. It's strange. We know everybody else. Post-Millennial drops this little bombshell yesterday morning by Hannah Nightingale. FBI blocked the surveillance team from interviewing the person of interest in the January 6th pipe bomb case. They note that the counterintelligence team used security footage to follow the person to a metro station. This is January 5th guy. And they, the card used to access the transit system. The card allowed them to determine he got off a stop in Northern Virginia where the person was seen in their car. The car and the car registered in the name of that was the name of an Air Force Chief Master Sergeant is now working as a contractor with a security clearance. Folks, that last angle is a new part. We covered that first, but that's the new part. Was a contractor with a security clearance? So I just want to be clear here.
I just want to be clear here. Dan Bongino used to know this. And by the way, that story was not new at the time when he was covering it. That was January 30th of 2024. That story actually broke with his friend, Kerry Pickett, who covered all of those details at the Washington Times in May of 2023, more than 6 months earlier. Not only did I say that the pipe bombs were inoperable, let me scroll down here and I will show you exactly what I said. By the way, I remembered it being that he was a chief master sergeant is what they told us. Guess what? That's what they freaking told us. My memory is still good from 5 years ago on that. Go freaking figure. Okay, here it goes. Mr. Serafin, who was suspended in February, suspended from the FBI in April of 2022. My bad, I'm reading right here. Because he refused to get the COVID vaccine and was eventually fired a month later for unprofessional conduct, criticized the Bureau's early handling of the FBI pipe bomb investigation. Within days of the discovery of the bomb, he said investigators reviewed closed-circuit video of the masked pipe bomber as he traveled through the metro system. What's shocking, Mr. Serafin says, was that the FBI early on linked the bomber to a DC Metro Rail smart card. The card indicated that the person got off a train in Northern Virginia stop after planting both devices on January 5th. So they tagged the entrance time and the exit, the exact time that guy. Then they found out who bought the card. The guy who bought the card was not the guy who was using it. As said, the card had never been used. It was brought a year prior by a retired chief master sergeant in the Air Force. He was a security contractor. He held a security clearance. This is Bongino's reporting it like it's a bombshell when it's actually 6 months later. FBI had surveillance footage showing that person entering a car with a visible license plate, exiting the metro stop. That license plate tied back to the person whose door I sat outside of. All of this stuff was covered back then. This goes back to 2023. Bongino used to know this stuff. So what the hell happened? Where did they go? Where did those guys go? This is not the only time. He continued to cover this stuff. He continued to allege that he had inside information. He's now the deputy director, the number 2. Here's the craziest thing about that deputy director role. As I mentioned, Paul Abate took over in February. The reason is because the guy before it, who was an agent's agent by all accounts, and someone that I met very briefly, and in my minimal contact with him, I had a very positive read on him. He still carried a gun, despite being the top number 2 guy in the FBI. He was the number 1 agent, because the director's not an agent. The number 1 agent in the FBI, his name was David Bowditch. And again, I had one conversation, maybe 2 with him over a period of time while we were dealing with Portland and the burnings that was going on out there. I liked him. My read on him was like, this is a guy that I want in charge. You know what happened? January 6th happened. I think they had a subject a week later. I believe they went and cleared that person and shouldn't have about 2 weeks after the incident. And then on January the 29th at about 4 p.m. Eastern time, David Bowditch, who had more than 20 years of experience inside the FBI, retired with no notice. He sent out an email saying that he retired effective immediately and he was gone. No goodbye party, no here's the long bio and what a great guy he is, no video that was out to the troops. Hey, it's been really a great time serving with you and this has been a thing. He disappeared. He retired on a Friday with no notice, and anybody who was part of the FBI in 2021 will remember that because it was really unusual. And the next Monday morning, we woke up and we had Paul Abate, a BLM sympathizer, a guy who was allegedly sleeping with employees inside the FBI, young women. I had credible information from multiple sources on this stuff. There are multiple whistleblower disclosures about that specifically. The number 2 walked away with no fanfare and no notice. Now, that's not normal for that wouldn't bother you guys because you wouldn't know. But I, at the time, was like, what the hell just happened? And so did many other senior agents. That same role is now occupied by Dan Bongino. You think they didn't ask him to do the same thing they asked Bowditch to do? And if he said yes, I can imagine that probably haunts him. Just telling you. The guy used to know something. Where are all those sources that he had?
You ready for number 2? Here's another one. Separate whistleblower reaches out to me. And this I've been working on for a while. This isn't new. Folks, let's just get this out of the way about January 6th. It is now confirmed. I mean, you knew this in advance. So this is why I put this first. This is not breaking news. However, I can confirm to you, in case you were even remotely deluded about it, say you're a lefty watching my show, that the FBI 100% had undercovers in the crowd on January 6th. I know you know that. I'm just saying Christopher Wray's been shady about it and others. I'm telling you from a source on the ground with photo evidence to back it up. The FBI and other agencies, not just the FBI, by the way, had multiple undercovers on the ground on January 6th. Period. There's now no disputing it. I've seen the evidence. Number 2, the pipe bombs that were placed at the DNC and the RNC that I believe were planted there on purpose by people looking to frame Trump supporters, to stop the objection to the certification of the vote. They didn't want people talking about voter fraud problems, so they needed this. After the pipe bombs were found, assets on the ground, including a whistleblower who was not there but was one of the assets on the ground, was briefed about the pipe bombs the next day and shown a picture of a guy in a hoodie. Hey, we're looking for this guy. Planted these pipe bombs. And they were like, wow, that's crazy. Almost killed Kamala Harris, God forbid. This whistleblower tells me that, but 2 days later, after the pipe bombs, he notes, emphasis his, without explanation, they were told to stand down. No need to look for the guy anymore, which is really strange because the FBI is telling us now there's like a $22 trillion reward for finding this guy. $500,000.
Dan Bongino's wearing a cutesy time shirt there. Is that not the most ironic thing in the world? What you're looking at right now on the left, the one with the dark frame, is the door that I was tasked with watching along with my surveillance team. And on the right is the door at that time that Steve Baker's identified subject lived at. We did this yesterday. They share a common wall. They share a roof. Their stairwell is connected and it is divided only by a facade of bricks. If you were to spit outside of one of those doors and the wind was blowing right, it would blow directly back into the neighbor's door. They're maybe 9 feet apart on center of the doors on walking in. You think that's a freaking coincidence? That if you just looked at the same facts that the investigators did on the ground for the week after January 6th, they wouldn't come up with the same thing that Steve Baker came up with? I don't think the FBI missed it. I think the FBI nailed it. I think they were on the ball. I think they absolutely put us in the right place on purpose. And I can't think otherwise because there are literally millions of doorways in the DC metro area. Between Baltimore and Fredericksburg and going all the way out to Winchester, there are millions of people living in millions of different residences. And they put us 9 feet away from the actual person because we went to the person who was not supposedly the bomber, but was the best connection we had at the time that we were going to pattern up. And then what you find in the Massey piece, when they went out and released the 4-year update, it looks exactly like this. Bottom line here, on January the 19th, 2021, FBI agents interviewed person of interest 2, which I don't think was the bomber, and ultimately eliminated this individual as a person of interest. That's going to be really interesting. You just heard Dan Bongino say something that you have to hone in on. He said they were showing a picture of a dude in a hoodie. If only that picture had made it to somebody in Congress at some point in time in the last, 48 hours. If only that picture could actually identify something that would actually substantiate the things that Steve Baker and co. were involved in. If only. What else does Dan have to say? Other than cutesy time is over.
What did I do now? Because, Michael, our batting average is? What is it again? The blackout coffee timeout to celebrate our batting average of, yes, 1,000. I told you that the January 6th bomber case, where a pipe bomb was planted at the DNC where Kamala Harris was on January 6th, and nobody in the media wants to talk about it. I told you when Donald Trump won, did I not? Go back and find the videos yourself, that there are going to be people in the FBI who are trying to protect their jobs. And they're going to start releasing information now about the bomber, which was an inside job, no question in my mind. It was clearly some Democrat operative trying to stop Republicans from questioning the January 6, 2020 election. I told you insiders were going to start releasing information because they wanted to cozy up to the Trump team. And they were going to say, it's new video. How is it new video?
Well, it's not new video. It's video that's been there since January 6th and January 5th of 2021. The question is, could you get access to it? And the answer is yes. Like, some people actually got some access to it. Those people are called Joe Hanneman and Steve Baker, and an internet observer known as Armitage. You think that I'm going to share something kind of like just tradecraft. Those of you who were in law enforcement, will you please validate what I'm saying here? We were put on persons of interest. My team did specialty surveillance. What we did is we sat outside people's houses for indefinite amounts of time for no particular reason. And you can use surveillance in various different ways. Way number one, you want to know things about that person. You're going to, quote unquote, pattern of life them. You're going to pattern their life. You're going to find out what time they wake up. When do the lights kick on? We're there at 3 a.m. When their lights kick on at 5:45, we note that. Okay. They walk out the door every single day at 7:18 or 7:20. And they go on work, and they go to work on foot, or they go to work in a vehicle, or they go to the bus stop, or they get picked up on a scooter and a friend, and they hug that person and they ride it in, whatever. We find out what that pattern is. They go to the same job, and they do it on these days. They work at a different job because they're a contractor. They work at a random construction site, which has been the same for the last little bit, but it could change when they have a new job and they're contracted out somewhere else, right? We pattern their life. That's one way to do it. The other way is we want to see something very specific. This is a potential drug dealer, and we think that there is going to be a handoff or a purchase or a supplier visiting them or them visiting, and we want to see that. So we're going to be there when fill in the blank person shows up. And sometimes we take that pattern of life piece and we hold on to it long enough where we develop some interesting sort of questions. And so the case agent will want to go out and knock on the door and do what's called a knock and talk, or an arranged interview, or a field interview, or an impromptu interview. They want to do a bump in the field at a restaurant and ask this person questions. And when you do that, you usually get the subject kind of hinked up. That's kind of the word that people use. They get kind of squirrely because now the feds or the law enforcement officers, the cops, have come and talked to them. And so they may act a little bit differently than they would otherwise. You can squeeze people and then see where it squirts out. This is sort of like the water balloon theory. You squeeze, and where does it pop out? That's where you want to go. So sometimes you'll use surveillance to be able to watch somebody, know what their normal pattern is, and then squeeze them and see what the change in that pattern would be. Let me tell you very, very clearly that my surveillance team was regularly used for another thing called CYA, which is that somebody might be accused at some point in time of being involved in some sort of obscure violence plot. And rather than have to answer for how they got away with it, they would park me and my team at $10,000 a shift when it comes to salary and operating costs and all the equipment we had. And they would do that for 3 shifts in a row, 24/7 for as long as they needed to the point where we actually sat on a guy who was in the Marine Corps and had no access to anything and was living on base with a camera outside of his door. And we sat there for literally months at $30,000 a day. Okay? The Bureau does not care about wasting your money. They do not care about wasting surveillance resources, and CYA was a regular thing that we did. Management wanted to say we did something. Kyle, can you prove it? I sure can. Check this out, because this is not what I would consider significant resources, but they did it anyway. Almost immediately after the FBI identified multiple persons of interest, blah, 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 documentation obtained by the subcommittee, person of interest identified, morning of January 5th, blah, 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 blah. They have person of interest 2 walking around. What did they say? Oh, in the following week after January 6th, the FBI directed significant resources towards investigating POI 2 and 3. For example, the FBI placed both POI 2 and POI 3 under FISUR. That was my job. FISUR, F-I-S-U-R, or physical surveillance, which was held by Washington Field Office's WFO Special Operations Team, also known as SOG. For those of you who have never seen what goes on in this office, allow me to point something out to you. Right back here, that's my plaque that came from that squad, ID 21, which is where I worked. It says Washington Field Office Special Operations Group. For those of you that are on my locals, you guys have seen the tour of the studio, and that's what's there. Okay? We were the significant resources deployed, along with others. One of the things you would do when you put those resources on is you would leave them on as long as humanly possible. You would never tell anybody what was going on. You would let them just sit there. And I sat there and peed in a bottle and saw nobody all the time for sometimes weeks on end. It was regular. Why did they put us on for 2 days, pull us off, and then go do the interview and not follow the people after the interview to see what the squeeze was? When you can answer that, you'll understand exactly why Dan Bongino thought that there was a put-up job and a cover-up. A lot of people think that. Some people still do, one would think.
Is it potentially the biggest setup in the history of this country?
Potentially.
One of the greatest crimes against the American people.
That's why it's so important to get the truth with this. That's what we're working for. And the cover-ups that happened after January 6th is what I'm really after as well.
What about the Republicans involved in those cover-ups? I know it's hard for you to address those things. This is your own party, but this is the reality. I mean,
we're going to go where evidence leads.
No matter what.
No matter what.
I'm going to hold you to that.
Yes.
That was Congressman Loudermilk. We're going to hold him to it, aren't we? I think we can. I think that'll be okay. I think that we're in good shape with that. Who else can we believe that doesn't seem to understand or seems to understand what the problem is? There's this other guy.
Here's my question. Is anybody representing the people anymore? Because it kind of feels like, it used to feel like the parties were against each other, and now it feels like it's the government versus the people. That's what it feels like.
I think it is. I mean, I call it the uniparty. Last year, Marjorie Taylor Greene and I introduced a resolution to oust Mike Johnson. After Mike Johnson put a bill on the floor and was the tie-breaking vote to send more money to Ukraine, after he passed another omnibus, after he passed another bill to spy on Americans, using mostly Democrat votes, because a lot of Republicans are waking up to that and didn't vote for it. After he did like 3 or 4 really bad things, Marjorie and I put a resolution on the floor.
Which you think are bad things, right?
I think they're bad things. Okay. Spying on Americans, sending all the money to Ukraine. Yeah, I think they are. I think they're not Republican priorities. And he's a Republican speaker. So we put a resolution on the floor to vacate the speaker's office. And
what does that mean? To get a new speaker?
Get a new speaker.
Okay.
And typically no Democrat will vote for that. And if he doesn't have enough Republicans to sustain that vote, he will lose and you get a new speaker.
Why would no Democrat vote for that?
Well, for the first time in history, they did. Like, they did vote to keep Mike Johnson because it was as good as they've ever had it. They were getting everything they wanted.
You believe he was helping their party?
Yeah, he was helping their party. So
let's just leave it right there. You guys think Mike Johnson is helping anybody? I don't. Massey doesn't. That's why I like him. No, we don't have to agree with everything that Massey says, but it turns out he's pretty spot on with that. He calls out the uniparty where it is. And isn't it time? One of you guys brought up the surveillance thing as the rubber gun squad. So I want to actually, sometimes our chat brings up some really salient points. So if you guys are not joining our morning chat, if you have the opportunity, come in and join us. Like, I read the chat while the videos are playing. I oftentimes will see things that catch my eye. One of the things that just was trolled on there was, hey, wasn't the special operations group, wasn't the SOG squad, aren't they the rubber gun squad? That's a slang term in law enforcement for the people that basically suck so much that they can't actually do real work. So you got to send them out there to get rid of them. I have a different name for SOG. And it's one of the things that got me in trouble with former FBI guys that really wanted to go up there and burnish their reputation. I don't mind telling you that the stuff that I did was oftentimes not very interesting, glamorous, or even like really impressive. It actually wasn't most of the time. The SOG, the surveillance squad, I call it the island of misfit toys, right? From the original little like Rudolph claymation thing. It's a bunch of people that couldn't get along with other groups. Like, they either were like real smart and they were hard chargers and they went to like a low charging area and so they didn't fit in, or they were people that were just personality problems, or they were just too old and lazy and didn't want to work, or maybe they'd already done a bunch of other work and they wanted to sit out and be part of the team. We had a whole mix of people. Some were great. We had some really legendary type characters out there. We had some totally useless people that couldn't even show up with their equipment every day. And I'm not even sure if they were armed. Like, fat, lazy, I had a guy that showed up drunk to multiple shifts and I sent him home when I was a team leader. So yeah, it was kind of the rubber gun squad in a lot of ways. The difference was, after we got rid of John Nance as our supervisor, oops, I said that, but yeah, he got moved out by the inspection division. He went over to handle an aviation squadron, even though he's not a pilot and knows nothing about planes, including transponders. When he went over there and did that, we got a new supervisor in, and he was a former HRT guy. And so HRT is the hostage rescue team. They're probably like the hardest charging, most like physically killer, athlete, stud, operator type dudes. They're not necessarily the best case agent, but this guy was actually really, really squared away. and he was a West Pointer, and he was a former Ranger Battalion dude. And so he was like what you'd hope if you wanted to put together like kind of a team of studs that wanted to go do real work when you had a group that previously didn't. So we implemented a fitness standard, which had never been done at Washington Field. And we actually set the standard. I actually got awarded for the work that we did rebuilding that SOG squad. And by the time January 6th rolled around, we were considered the second, maybe, and one of the few non-all SWAT, but tactically oriented SOG squads, where we had former cops and guys who knew how to shoot and guys who could run down, and we had multiple language. We had Arabic and Spanish speakers. We could go and do like really, really advanced and capability-driven surveillance, which was not common in the FBI. And so we were recognized for that. I actually got an award for like $3,000. They wrote me a check saying like, you did an awesome job, and I got it from none other than Jen Moore, who ended up firing me. So that's pretty interesting. So yes, that was the case. And on that day, the people who were the studs that we had put together and gotten there were actually watching on this particular moment. So you'd think that there'd be some information that would actually help them, unless they were willing to cover it up. And here's why you're not hearing anything from today's FBI. They got compromised. They got captured by the FBI. That doesn't mean that somebody like showed them a picture of them, sleeping around on their wife or something like that. What it means is that for whatever reason, their instincts now align with the FBI more than they align with what they used to say. Here's Kash Patel doing it under oath. And look what he does. He immediately spins, diffuses, deflects, answers not at all. And we've never seen the information that he has while he's talking to Dick Durbin here. Apparently, he had lots of evidence. Where the hell is it? Steve Baker got it, and he beat you to your own story.
Director Patel, much like you, Deputy Director Dan Bongino was a conspiracy theorist who built a lucrative career making inflammatory and unsubstantiated statements about the FBI that would be disqualifying in any administration that cared about nonpartisan law enforcement. For instance, Mr. Bongino called the placement of pipe bombs outside the DNC and RNC headquarters on January 6, quote, an inside job, and went on to say this was a setup. I have zero doubt, and whoever goes into the FBI, you better get an answer about why. Director Patel, you and Deputy Director Bongino are now leading the FBI. What is the evidence to suggest the pipe bombs placed outside of the DNC and RNC on January 6 were an inside job?
I appreciate the opportunity to discuss Director Bongino's mind record. So many on this committee and the media jettison our 31 years of public service.
Can you answer the question, sir?
I'm answering the question. You're questioning the integrity of the deputy director of the FBI and mine.
If you found any
and I'm
evidence.
going to answer the question. The pipe bomb investigation is ongoing, and I'm not going to discuss the details of the pipe bomb investigation. Mr. Bongino was a Secret Service agent for 15 years, a police officer for 5. I served this country in multiple administrations for 16 years. We were also private citizens, and we are now back in government service. And what we have the ability to do is set aside our personal beliefs to deliver the mission of justice for this country, and we're doing it day in and day out. And I find it disgusting that everyone and anyone would jettison our 31 years of combined experience that is now at the helm of the FBI, delivering historic results at historic speeds for the American people.
So you have no evidence?
I got a lot of evidence, and I'll give it to you when I can.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
You're so full of shit. How sad is that you went out and gave that speech and you thought that was like dominating? You're like, yeah. Do you think he wrote, you guys ever see it? Like there was this kind of scandal after he did one of these things. He wrote himself little affirmations on his director, Kash Patel, letterhead. He made himself little tablets that said Director Kash Patel, not from the director of the FBI or like office of the FBI director. No, it says Director Kash Patel on his little document pages. And he's out there like writing himself like, you did a good job. That was a great answer. Like stay in the pocket, like keep it going. Like you're doing it. Tell him what's up. Dick Durbin is a jerk. Like this kind of stuff. He was writing himself affirmations. This dude is a clown. And I had no idea. And I'm so ashamed that I didn't know that. Dick Durbin owned you. Dick Durbin, who is not going to go back for re-election. Dick Durbin, who's done, and he's been doing this forever, and he's exhausted. He's 1,000 years old, and he doesn't even care whether or not he cares, and he still owned you. He said, can you answer the question? And you're like, no, I'm going to go on my freaking speech about how great I am. Can you imagine that I would ever yell to you? He's like a Mark Levin. Anyway, that was amazing. That was amazing to me, because he said, I'm going to show you the evidence. Well, that was months ago. Where are you at, bro? All you're doing is blocking access to the jet with your most transparent nonsense. How sad. How pathetic are we right now with these guys? And what have you done? You've sent your freaking crappy blue crabs out there to pull the crabs that are trying to climb out of the basket and give people the truth. You're trying to pull them back in. So there's a live view of Julie Kelly at the bottom there trying to pull Steve Baker, who's almost out. He's almost got it. I feel like we nailed it. I think the information that they've got is going to be very substantial. The problem is none of these people have actually evaluated the evidence that Blaze has. Do you know how I know? Because nobody has seen what they've done. They went out there to a intelligence agency and or intelligence adjacent sort of situation, kind of being deliberately vague here on purpose, because it's not my story to tell, and I don't want to expose anybody else's equities here or their sourcing. If you guys think that biometrics such as gait analysis is some random connection, and you had Julie Kelly on Bannon crying about how there's bad footage, the FBI put it out, and they didn't use the bad footage, so we've got questions. Well, did you go do any original work? How many hours has Julie Kelly spent in the Capitol Police CCTV footage room? Anybody know? I'm going to be willing to bet that it is like a whole number that is less than 10. Baker's is in the hundreds of hours spent in there, as is the rest of his team. They've spent thousands of combined hours going over this stuff, and then some of this stuff was actually downloaded. And so they did it at home. Thousands of hours of time pouring over hundreds of different cameras, looking at the same thing from as many angles as they can find, reaching through, figuring out, walking the grounds, looking for more cameras. Would they have an angle here? What number is that camera right there? Oh, it's number 675. Okay, can we get the timestamp from 675 and go in and zoom in on this? What can we do? Can we enhance this at all? Blah, 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 blah. These guys busted their ass to find a story. And rather than people going, thank God, you're going to expose truth, they're like, no, come back into the barrel with us where we don't know anything. It's really embarrassing. That spin is going to keep going on. Where are the guys that we thought were going in to run these agencies? Because once you pull this down, and this goes back to the beginning, the weight that's sitting on the shoulder right now, when somebody calls you and tells you that people get killed for what you're talking about, it's because the implications are, this is the implications of maybe the middle end of what this story could look like. Capitol police officers involved in placing a bomb at the Capitol on January the 5th. Then those same Capitol police officers allegedly go out there and then are engaged in the less than lethal munitions used to stir up a crowd, hoping that there would be something that would be more terroristic and more aggressively violent and potentially even bloodshed on the day of January 6th. Who asked those people to do it? Who do they answer to? Well, they roll up one place. They roll up to the Speaker of the House and the Senate Majority Leader. So you've got people in Congress as part of it. Then you have that person transferred over to the CIA, where I had an FBI source tell me yesterday, we moved people to the CIA when we wanted them to disappear and go away, not because like they earned a promotion, but because we wanted to stash them somewhere. And the CIA has the ability to go wipe their social media. And they do this because they have covert operatives that come and work for them. So isn't that a good place to go stash somebody, even if it's a lateral job? It's actually more prestigious to work for Capitol Police than to work for force protection over at CIA, folks. Just telling you. As far as like the ladder of federal law enforcement honor goes, being a security guard at the CIA is not a promotion. But it is a place where they have the ability to scrape all your stuff. And you think there wasn't a polygraph? So who let the polygraph slide if that's the case? That's what we got to know. And that means that somebody made some phone calls. And then why did the FBI pull off the case in mid-January when my team was sitting outside this door and we were 9 feet away from the right door? Per Steve Baker's story. That's the question that has to be asked. And the people who could answer it, they're not saying anything. They haven't weighed in. The reward still, what did Dan call it? A $21 trillion reward, AKA 500,000. All right. This is what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with people that don't want to be honest. And it's coming. It turns out the truth finds a way out eventually. It comes out a lot faster in the internet era. And it comes out a lot faster when a couple of people have some bravery. So thank God for that too. That's it. That's what we're going to talk about today. This week's going to be nuts for me. I think it might be nuts if you guys are paying attention to this. I hope you share it. I hope you share the podcast with somebody who doesn't understand what it is that's going on. And you guys can do that over at KyleSerafinshow.com. Just pick up that link, send it to a friend, say, yo, you got to listen to the last episode. Please do it. We need to share people. We need to have this spin cycle get dismembered. as fast as we can. You can join us on Locals if you guys want to see some of the extra resources we put out, KyleSerafin.com. By the way, the we, it's just me. I'm sorry. I don't mean to say that. It's just me, though. And you. You guys are the other part of it. And so you can like us. You can share the video. You can subscribe over on YouTube. You can subscribe over on Rumble. And if you haven't subscribed on Spotify, if you're an audio-only listener, again, no additional money from me. It doesn't make a difference where you listen, other than I think the format is better on Spotify because you can close it out, you can open it back up again and still get the audio, just like you would on Apple Podcasts or iHeart or anything else. But you can also push a button and flip over to video when you want to see something. And maybe you're curious about what that really tasteless art looks like. Or maybe you want to see Dan Bongino's Cutesy Time shirt, whatever it is. If you want to see the crabs that are pulling each other back in. The visuals here, the show is not the most visual thing in the world. It's just me pushing buttons. But it does have the opportunity for you to see some of the things that I'm making in a visual point. So that's my pitch. I really appreciate you guys. I didn't give you a palate cleanser yesterday, and I did feel kind of bad about it. So let's just go completely off the reservation and do something funny. You know who are great? We had a Marine Corps birthday the other day. Let's honor Marines and their ingenuity to entertain themselves in the barracks. Here's a palate cleanse for today.
Marines are always on the lookout for new ways to entertain themselves and stumbled upon a peculiar ritual where they dipped Cheetos in a small amount of NyQuil and left them out as bait for the local squirrel population. Once the squirrels were sedated, the Marines would meticulously shave officer ranks into their fur. This ritual was dubbed Squirrel Salute. And when the squirrels woke up, sporting their new officer military insignia, whenever they would wander into the Marines area, all Marines would say on deck and proceed to salute the incoming officers. This odd pastime continued without incident until one particularly feisty squirrel, now sporting the rank of lieutenant, woke up earlier than anticipated. Most likely enraged and likely disoriented, it sought retribution, sinking its teeth into the Marine's finger as he attempted to complete his commissioning process.
Hoorah! That's what happens. Do not go and drug squirrels with NyQuil and Cheetos and shave officer ranks into them. The squirrel salute is not an acceptable form of salute, but it is a really good way to entertain yourself. I guess it's better than midget hookers, which is a story I've heard from guys in the Army. So well done, Marine Corps. Congrats to all of you that have served, regardless of whether you guys would send your kids into it. I thank you for your service. This country is better off because you're out there in it, even if you're just a voice that's listening and saying, I'm still going to hold true to my principles and the values that I had. God bless you. Look forward to seeing you guys again tomorrow. Do it again at 09:30 Eastern time or thereabouts. Watch out for that spin cycle.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.